welcome to Through the Mist with me, your host Owen. This is a void and verse theory podcast where we will look at the law and try to understand how it all works. In this episode, we'll be looking at the land beyond God. Welcome. Hey guys, welcome back. This is a new episode. Yeah, been a while. It's been like a month or so. It's just over probably. Only one more month until the last ever book comes out in this universe. Well, unless he decides to make more, but probably not. I hope everyone's had a good August. Percy's birthday was this last month, so happy birthday, Percy. Yeah, I went on holiday, so I didn't do any research or anything. Spent a good time up in Wales, had fun, climbed Snowdon, all the usual. But while I was up there, I did read through the Kane Chronicles again, and I just need to state some things, okay? I need to get some things off my chest about these books, and this is the platform I'm going to do it, because why not, hey? So yeah, first thing I need to mention is Sadie and her Ribena. So Ribena, for people that don't know, is a black currant squash, and for people that don't know what squash is, it's an extremely concentrated juice that you put in, and then you add some water. But reading those books, I realised good old Uncle Rick is on about the shop bought stuff, and if you like Ribena, you're not getting the shop bought stuff. It's weird. I've now imagined Sadie having a load of they put out Robinsons put out, I think Robinsons, maybe Ribena have done it, so they put out these little tiny juice squash things you can take with you, go and you squirt it in, add your water, flavour your water. But come on, that's not how you take Ribena. If you're British, back me up, please, because you know that if you like Ribena, you do not take it from the shop bought one. Shop bought one is not the best version of Ribena. Last time I tried shop bought Ribena, I thought it was too weak. So that's me. Other shout out I want to do is he shouts out Swindon in the books. Good old Swindon. That's I suppose my hometown. It's the closest town. It's not really anything special, but it's got a massive railway history past, which is my other passion. Railways. But it's he shouts out because it's I think Sadie's at one point it could be any town, like Swindon versus Manchester. Now, I know Rick has been to Swindon because that's how I got my book. My first book was because Rick did a conference in Swindon to a load of teachers, one of them being my mum. She brought the book home. I read the book. I've been infatuated with the series. So I know he's been to Swindon. And he's probably also been to Manchester. Now, they're two very different places. Swindon is throughout a dump and has very little skyscrapers. Manchester, I've been into Piccadilly, so I haven't really been to Manchester, but I've been to Piccadilly. And one, it's got trams. Two, I'm pretty sure the city centre isn't a wasteland where there's just massive brownfield sites waiting to get built on again. And three, it's got taller skyscrapers and more of them than Swindon. Swindon is its dump. If you saw the difference between Swindon and Manchester, you would know which one you were in. Okay, basically that's it. You might have a really complicated roundabout in Swindon, magic roundabout, but Manchester, you will know the difference. They're very different places. Okay, yeah. Also, I've put together a little map of Sadie's, of all the locations in London that in the Kane Chronicles take place, because as I said, I'm kind of infatuated with railways, and it talks about the transport and stuff like that, and Mr. Dr. Kane decided to take a stupid taxi from Heathrow to basically Canary Wharf. Is absolute why? It makes no sense. That will cost you like 400 quid or something stupid. I don't know. London prices and taxi would take forever. Just jump on the Jubilee. On the Piccadilly, then you jump on the Jubilee and you're in Canary Wharf. It's not that hard. Also, I think at some point he mentions Canary Wharf as a small station. It is not a small station. It is quite a big station. But, whatever. Yeah. I put a little map together of all the locations, including Sadie's house, because there's not many places it could be. The majority of the Thames is not as northern and southern banks. She's on an eastern bank somewhere. I think, eastern banks. Yes, on an eastern bank somewhere, then it is very easy to pinpoint, and her nearest tube station is Canary Wharf. There's like the Isle of Dogs, and that's about it. That's where she lives. It's the only place she can live. So yeah, I've got that, which I'll post to Instagram at through_mist. If you want to go follow that, check everything out. Also, while I'm plugging that stuff, there's an email address, through.t.mist@gmail.com, if you want to get in touch with any theory ideas you have, or report back with, oh, and that idea was terrible, you could come up with better stuff than this, or just general fun chinwaggy, or even like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, but what about this as well? And if you send it through, maybe we'll talk about it in another episode. Right then, let's get on to talking about the gods. Yeah, okay, so the land beyond the gods, that is the topic for today's episode. And when I say the land beyond the gods, if you hadn't read Who's Son, as I like to say, which is Heroes Olympus, son of Neptune, then you will have no idea what I'm on about. But I'm on about Alaska. We're going to try and come up with a reason for why Alaska is the land beyond the gods. Is it just is there any historical reasons, or is it just purely thematic? And by the end of this, hopefully you'll see why I decided in the last episode. So I came up with this idea after recording the last episode, and I made that weird, and I had that tangent and made that off comment, and you get there. And why Scotland was mentioned last episode as maybe being Alaska or the land beyond the gods. If you don't know British history, then it's fun time. You might find something out. Yeah. So where to start? Let's start with Alaska and its history. So Alaska. How did it happen? Why is it now part of the States? To be honest, this seems like a very complicated political history, and I don't know much about it. I did some research. This is what I came up with. So, clearly, Alaska, if you just look at a map of the world, it is very obvious that humans first arrived in the Americas. That's the continent of the Americas, rather than the actual country. Came across via Alaska for a land bridge that would have been connected to Russia. I think Russia gets that far. I'll look at a map. Yeah, probably Russia or Asia. We'll just call it Asia. And they walked across, and they settled in Alaska and slowly worked their way down, all the way down to what is now Argentina in South Americas. So it is thought that some trade was done with some of the southern Alaskan tribes with Asia prior to any European, Russian being European, influences of discovery of the Americas occurred, which makes sense. They aren't that far away. If you go far enough north, I feel like you should be able to occasionally, on a very clear day, see the Alaska, but who knows? Written history of Alaska starts when in 1733, when it became part of the Russian territory and part of what it was known as Russian America, and it was like that between 1733 and 1867. And on the 1st of August 1867, Russia sold the territory because it couldn't work out how to pay. It wasn't making the money. It was just a loss because it was a massive landmass. They sold it to the US for $7.2 million US. Sold to the US then because they didn't think it would make money, and then through time people found oil and something else in Alaska. I can't remember what, and then it was a big money pot, so they kept it. Fun little thing I saw when I read it. The day before the US flag was flown in there, which was Friday the 18th of October 1867, was another Friday, October the 6th. So it was Friday the 6th, and then the next day it was Friday the 18th of October, and that was due to the two things. One, they changed calendars to the Gregorian, and the date line also shifted. So it was in the same time day-night cycle as the rest of the states, I guess. So yeah, there was a lot of political changes, like it was a territory and something else and something else and something else before officially becoming a state on January the 3rd, 1959. So that was a long time of being owned by the US, but not really being part of the US. I guess it's a bit like maybe us in Gibraltar, maybe Jersey and Guernsey for us. I guess it's a bit like that, where they're territories more than part of it itself. That's basic Alaskan history. And I looked at that and went, okay, is there any clear reason through Alaskan history why it would be the land of the gods? And it looks a little mucky. I mean, it follows, to my understanding, it follows a rather weird route to become a state. So maybe it doesn't have a higher concentration of Western Roman Grecian culture, so the gods themselves don't have a solid hold in there, as it originally was Russian, and then before that would be the natives, whereas other places like Canada, which is the obvious question when you say why Alaska isn't, Canada is within the gods realm, Frank, and maybe that's because Canada had a high influx. Canada was created from French and English colonists. Alaska was originally Russian colonists, so maybe that's why. But yeah, it's not. I don't feel like it's solid enough. So I went to Scotland with it. Scotland theory. Yeah. So while I was researching this Scotland theory, I may have been sidetracked a little bit and I'm going to talk about said sidetrack now because I enjoyed it. I enjoy the sidetrack. It was fun. I don't know where else to tell people about this information I've learned, so I'm going to talk to you lot. So, Roman Britain was also known as Britannia, and that was the area of the British Isles that was under Roman rule. It modernly equivalents to Wales, all of southern England, and most of northern England. And then you get to the borders where they shifted between England and Scotland throughout time, and it gets a bit weird about where Roman Britain was compared to England-Scotland border divide now. But Britannia isn't just the name of the Isles, and that's where Britain comes from, is why makes sense. I got sidetracked because it's also the name of a goddess, the personification of Britain itself. But it's really hard to see if there's any clear origins of the goddess. It was struggled, but far as I can tell, it was definitely Roman origin. But then things happened, and I'm not sure how much of our modern idea of her is linked to the Roman idea of her. So yeah, she was a Roman goddess called Britannia, and now, in modern times, she's usually depicted holding a trident, a shield depicting the flag, usually the slightly older flag when the Union of Crown happens, and an olive branch. Olive branch? Why is there an olive branch? What's that have to do with anything? The olive branch comes from her Roman origins as Minerva, and if you've listened to this, you should know Minerva was Athena. So, but here's the question. Here's the question that I'm going to throw out to you guys and see if you can come back to the answers with me. It's if Britannia was in the Rick Riordan books, how would her family tree be? How would she have been born? Would she have just appeared? Is she part of Athena? Minerva, is she another personality within that goddess? Or is she her own goddess herself that after a while maybe like split from Athena? I know like how cells divide she became so big, but also so separate from her origin as Athena that she got ripped apart off her. I don't know. Yeah, as I said, like that's the only bit that kind of links to her past. I can because the shield depicting the flag and the trident, that's not very Minerva or Athena at all. So, but that it's hard to tell when what bits of our knowledge of our version of her is the same as the Roman version of her. The olive branch is probably the key outlier and constant between both. Yeah, so the idea came back into the modern world with Elizabeth I. When Elizabeth I around, she brought that a strong female leader that brought back Britannia, and by the time of James IV of Scotland slash First of England being crowned, it kind of settled, and with the union of the crowns and the start towards the push towards the active union, where the two governments of England and Scotland became one. And when he created the new flag, I think it was him that created the flag, which is the St George's and St Andrew's cross on top of each other, or the English and Scottish flags on top of each other, which became the flag on the shield. Like, so he has some stuff to do with it. And then, but by the time Charles II came, she was put on the coins, the tails of his coins. She's kind of been on the 50p ever since I've been alive. Yeah, so that she was settled in what is her modern form. So how much had changed between Roman, Elizabeth I, and Charles II, I'm not sure. Not sure when bits came in. It doesn't seem like a very researched thing, or if it is, it's deep in a book somewhere and not on the internet. And I do internet research because I'm a modern human that doesn't go to libraries, especially not in times like this. Yeah. So Britannia was a goddess, and and I'm going to throw the question out to you of how, if she was in the Roydenverse, how would she's a Roman goddess, how would she fit into would she be a separate goddess to Minerva? Would she be part of Minerva / Athena? How does that all work? I'm going to throw that question to you guys, and you can come back to me, hopefully, with an answer. Yeah, I'll get back to the original idea of this, which is the Land Beyond the Gods now. Okay, we'll just run some music and then we'll be back here. Yeah, so Roman Britain. Go back to Roman Britain. Britannia is the place. Britain was first invaded in 43 AD under the orders of Emperor Claudius, and by around 100 AD, Romans had conquered the southern half of Britain, so modern Wales and England. Yeah, so basically that area of the world had been conquered then. But what really I'm focusing on here with Scotland, or what is now the area of Scotland, being beyond the gods, comes down to these two walls that were built during the Roman times. So when the Romans tried to conquer Caledonia, as they called it, or Scotland, hence the Caledonia sleeper, the sleeper train that goes from London and then around Scotland. Yeah, like I said, I like trains. They never really made it much further north than the Forth and Clyde. So after raids and etc., and they were a bit further north of the Forth and Clyde area, Romans retreated back to a defensive line that would become Hadrian's Wall. So Hadrian was a Roman emperor that either during or before his tour of Britain, he ordered the construction of a wall along this defensive line at around 112 AD, and this wall went between the Tyne and the Solway Firth. So if you get up a map, you can see all these places. The Tyne is now basically Newcastle, because the full name of Newcastle is Newcastle upon Tyne. Well, that was a terrible Geordie accent. Anyway, basically Newcastle almost directly across the country to Solway Firth, and that became the first like major border that separated what would become England from what would become Scotland. But not much longer after that, the new emperor Anthony, and I've just read that word properly for the first time. Have you ever do that when you're reading a book or something, and you read a word? I do it a lot with these books, and you read a word, but you never say it. It's just, that is the word. But that's the first time I've said Anthony, and I'm going to go with Anthony. Anthony, and that was a wall which was built in 142 AD, and that went back northwards and formed a defensive line between the Forth and Clyde, where the Romans had kind of originally settled. However, it was abandoned 6 years after its completion, and they retreated back to Hadrian's Wall. And the Romans, I think, made raids for north occasionally, but they never made it. They never made solid footing further than Hadrian's Wall. And Hadrian's Wall was built in a time where there was a lot of, in Rome itself, there was a lot of disturbances, and around Egypt there were rebellions and stuff. And we haven't even talked about the British rebellions because I just wanted to get to the walls really quickly. Which means they never really made it into Scotland, so their influence never made it that far north, and that is kind of my reasoning for saying Scotland would be Alaska, because it's beyond the Goths, because it's their influence never made it that far. They can never invade there, so they can never pass their ideas on there. Over time, yes, their ideas would have made it to Scotland, because both of the Union of Crowns, the Act of the Union, and the fact that it was so embedded in British history, specifically English history and Welsh history, that it would have more English, with Exeter, Bath, London being Londinian, the original Roman capital, Chester, and places like that. I think Chester, definitely Exeter, Bath, and London though, being first settled by Romans, Bath, having the baths, and all that stuff. And then when the cultures start to mix a bit more, after they stop warring so much, then, the acts that their culture can get there. There's this place in history where they never got that far. There's other borders, but this is the northerly border of the Roman Empire, is Hadrian's Wall, effectively. And so maybe Alaska is Scotland, because it's the most northerly parts of their respective land masses. This is another. I'll finish this. They're both northerly parts of their respective land masses, except Canada with Scotland. Canada in North America, I'm pretty sure that has some further north stuff in it, but it might not count because it's not part of the actual United States. And like I said, maybe it's a mixture of everything. Maybe it's the influences that have gathered. Maybe it's the historical fact of that. Maybe it's specifically the Romans gods don't have that much influence up in Alaska. Maybe the Greek gods have a little more, because Greeks never really had an empire. They kind of just had. Greeks never really had an empire because they never really were one people. They're mostly either city-states or part of Sparta, part of Athens empires. So maybe it's a mixture of everything, but I feel like, in my heart, I feel like Alaska and its weird relation to the US, about how it started, how it ended up joining, how it was sold from Russia, and the fact that Scotland in Britain and history of the Roman Empire was never conquered. They just never could. They attempted it, they never got that far. And Alaska being a bit like very spread out and stuff, it means that their influence there isn't great. It's that weird mix of all the stuff. So that's everything for this episode, I guess. But before I do the wrap-up thing, Bobby, just want to mention a couple of things that Another thing that irritated me when I was researching Alaska, and something that you might find interesting to look at. So the irritating thing is that Alaska is stated as the most most westerly and easterly points in the United States. And I'm sorry, but yes, it might be have the most easterly latitude and westerly latitude of the United States. Is the 360-degree line goes through it, but doesn't mean it's the most westerly. Never eat shredded easterly point of the states, because if you're measuring the states, you go from the center of the states. You don't use the latitude and longitude lines. That's not how you measure east and west of things. You don't use latitude and longitude lines. Latitude and longitude lines were invented to help sailors and just map out the world. You don't use latitude lines to measure the most easterly place of somewhere. I mean, it's a technicality that you could say it's the most easterly place, but no, east is a concept. It's just a direction 90 degrees clockwise of north. And west is 90 degrees anti-clockwise of north. That's the concept of them. And they touch each other. So it's not the most. That irritated me on a deep level. But the fun thing that you might want to go watch is like a 5-6 minute video on YouTube by Jay Foreman under MapMen, and it's the world oldest border, and it's a fun look into the English and Scottish border. If you want to find out more, I would suggest go watching that. And how so it's the world's oldest border, and it's on a series called MapMen on Jay Foreman's YouTube channel. He's got a load of other interesting stuff, I think, about mainly British stuff, but he's British and learning stuff. So if you're into that, go pop over there, have a look. But wrap everything up. Time to run the outro. For indulging this theory. If you have any comments on this theory or theories of your own that you want me to discuss, email them through to through.t.mist@gmail.com, or you can follow the Instagram @through_mist. Follow the podcast, like the podcast, rate the podcast, do all the things that you can to promote the podcast. I've been Owen. Come back next time as we try to see who the mist. Episode 4. Bye.